So this girl has started off with their family as a personal assistant, walking their dogs, taking care of the kids, running errands, and then they brought her into the business. I'm here with Patty McKernan with Gaudenzia. She's chief of staff and manages over 1,200 people in multiple regions: Philadelphia, Baltimore, Harrisburg. And of course, I'm here with Calvin from Clear Capital Management. Invest Smarter is his tagline. We're talking about what you want to do in your career, what pitfalls you might be coming up against, and how to navigate those waters. She started as an assistant, but she's very bright and works very quickly. So gained all this knowledge, they give her more responsibility. So she's still doing the personal assistant thing. Now she's doing executive administration. She's been with them for now 5 or 6 years. Now they have her added into project manager for construction on some major commercial projects. So she's now acquired all this knowledge from her point of view. She's doing all of this extra work that she started over here. So I've worked her through a few raises, but now she's at the boiling point from capacity standpoint. And the bosses are now golfing all the time. She said, I was in this exact same position last year, the same time.
Okay.
So what would you tell her? What would you tell a girl like that?
First, I think we need to know, what are her goals for herself? Where does she see herself going? Does she want to retain both parts of this job? And it sounds like she doesn't. And if she does not want to retain the personal assistance work that she's doing for this family, then that's the part that she needs to explain. I can either dedicate myself full time to the things that, by the way, I actually like, and I see a career, or she needs to understand what their expectations are. But if she wants to migrate in one direction, she needs to communicate that clearly. I think that I think our conversation is around, how do I set boundaries and how do I communicate clearly? The first thing is that you have to figure out what you want. Because if there is flexibility and that she enjoys doing those other personal assistant things and isn't ready to give them up, then she has to make a decision about that. So consider the conversation and how difficult it could be going to your employer saying, I really want to do less of this and more of that. And they look perplexed and say, but you offered to do this and you seem to enjoy doing that. They're going to be confused. So I think that we have to separate the hurt feelings from the confusion. Right? I think people often feel like I'm being taken advantage of, but they haven't said, I can't do both. One of the first things we tell people in balancing their time, right? And how would you handle multiple priorities? And your boss tells you, I need A, B, C, and D. And oh, by the way, go walk the dog, apparently, which is the scenario. If she can't get all of those things done, she has to say, well, which one of these things is the biggest priority? And how do I get that done? And I can't walk the dog if you want me to do those things. That's the first thing, but I think I've said multiple things are first things, but these are all things that have to happen.
I think she has trepidation about setting these lines, thinking that if she gives up one, are they going to question her? I think she's got a fear of losing something if she doesn't do everything.
Well, I think she needs to ask them that. People don't give you more responsibility when they think that you're incompetent, right?
No, they'll give you less.
Right. I mean, they'll figure a way to weed you out.
That's true.
If they start bringing in other people to your job, beware.
She did tell me that after she got upset and cried, that they were walking on eggshells for the next couple of days. I'm like, well, you're basically running everything for them. So if they lost you, they would be very upset. So you have an opportunity to figure it out, like you're saying.
Okay. Two bad things, right? Crying to your boss and then having them walk on eggshells. That's not a way to evoke, to elicit confidence from anybody you're working for or with. I'm not saying that we don't get upset in the workplace. I certainly have. I'm sure everybody has. And upset looks different for all sorts of people. But when you express your need to whoever you're working for, you should walk away feeling better. You should feel better. They should feel better. Because you know what? I'm telling you what my concerns are. I hear your voice. You don't all have to agree, but everybody got their chance to say what they need to say, and then they can move on with a better plan. Best supervisor is going to say, I hear you. Let me make clear what my expectations are. Confusion happens in that ambiguity. Conflict happens in that ambiguity. Clearing up that ambiguity is both the employee and the employer's responsibility. But an employer is not going to think that there's ambiguity unless you tell them.
Yeah, that's true. And, who better to take advice from? I mean, I don't think that anybody said it, but you are chief of staff for a very large organization in the state of Pennsylvania. How many employees do you manage in a day, Patty?
Well, there are 1,200 employees that I currently supervise that are under the agency. I have 9 direct reports, which is probably a little too much. And under those folks, they supervise probably a good 1,000 of those 1,200.
Well, that's why I wanted to ask you that, because as a chief of staff, a chief of people, the advice you're giving is good advice, because this is what a good leader would do. And maybe she's in a situation where this particular person isn't a great manager. Maybe they're a great CEO, but maybe they're not a great manager.
Well, people are complicated, right? They're not numbers, and they're not easily puzzle and fit all the pieces. And someday they bring their A game, and someday I bring my A game, and someday we all bring a C.
Yep.
So, and we can't interpret one bad day as writing that employee off or writing that supervisor off as saying they're always this way. Well, are they? I've been supervising people for a long time. So I think when I started supervising people about 2 years after college, so for more than 30 years, I've been supervising people, and they're complicated. But when you don't address things fairly, empathically, and directly, they go badly and they just fester. So I think as an employee who is struggling with, I'm unhappy at work, who'd you tell? And what is it that you're really unhappy with? Is it really your pay, or is it the opportunity, or is this job not for you?
Just not for you. I've had a couple of people say that recently, and so a couple of the strawberries. I don't mean to interrupt. I just want to make sure I hit all of these things, because these are the things women are talking about right now, and they range from age 23 all the way up to in their 60s. But we were talking earlier today about learning from other people, right? And sticking around. Calvin had talked about how some of the people that report to him are in a hurry to get promoted so that they can go be somewhere else
to the top level,
right,
after 1 year. Right? It just doesn't make sense, right? You grow, learn from the people around you, mature, and become the best person you can be before you try to move up to that top level.
In organizations, at least this is the school of thought that I've been raised in, and through my education and training, that you need to be someplace 5 years before you're making you're making an impact as a leader. I'm not necessarily speaking as a direct professional or a line staff person, but as a leader, you have to think about your 5-year design, and that you're making systemic change, you're making an impact. So the likelihood that I could come into any job, even at my level or anything else, or any level, and learn it within a year and be the expert, that's a bit of a challenge. Because part of your job, a certain percentage of it is technical skill, right? If I'm a counselor, am I a good counselor? Am I an engineer? Am I a good engineer? Am I an accountant? Am I doing, those are technical skills. I think what young professionals find, and what all of us know, is that the majority of your job is getting your job done with and through other people. And that is a whole nother skill set that no one teaches you in college, right?
I think that's what I found interesting when I was talking to a recent student from DePaul University who graduated, by the way, in finance and in capital markets. So she's no dummy when it comes to math and can run circles around anybody. But what she doesn't have yet is that interpersonal skill set, relationship skill set, where she's going to have to rely on, like you said, a team of people to help her get her job done and deliver it. One of the things that she said early on in her career was that she was very impatient with other people and that she couldn't stand the stupidity. And I kind of chuckled because I related to that. I mean, I was like that. Like, how can you not get this yet? But then what she realized was that, hey, if I'm trying to be out in front all the time, I'm going to be pretty lonely because I'll be by myself and nobody else is going to be there. And I'm not going to be very popular with my colleagues. So that community inside of an organization is something that she recognized. Thank goodness she recognized it and didn't wait too long to learn that.
Well, look, and I don't know if you had the same experience when you started, but after 6 years of college and a master's degree, I started my first job as an acoustical engineer and realized in the first 2 months I had learned more than I learned in that entire 6 years of college. And I'm not trying to denigrate my college degree, but it really struck me how much I didn't know and how much I learned in just a very short time being there. And it's and a lot of young people don't want to stay put today. They want to, bounce around every year or two. And what happens is you don't grow when you do that. You don't stick around long enough to gain the institutional knowledge, learn from the people around you, and then, hopefully get promoted and grow even more. You don't get that if you just stay a year or two. It just doesn't work.
It doesn't. I agree with you. And not for anything, my undergrad was in psychology and sociology, and I don't think that it taught me how to work and learn from people. So, I think that you learn so much of that and if we're thinking in my head still about the 5 years of making an impact, and 1 year really being one cycle, right? One full cycle of how does this place work, and then getting that under your belt. That is it is unlikely that in 18 months that you are ready to be your own boss. Right. Or that, and now with the trend for more people working from home, you're not getting that face-to-face time. You're getting virtual face-to-face time. So maybe I know for me, when I work remotely, I'm able to get more done, perhaps ideally getting more done of the things I need to get written, communications I need to get written, and the interactions with people are really transactional. Right. So you're jumping on a virtual meeting and you're like, did you see this? Did you see that? You're not really getting the same sort of personal equity, investment of time with others. And that's lost when you're not in the workplace. And that happens not only just each time you're interacting with people, but over periods of time, because you spend, and I know it's trite, but it's true. You spend 40 plus hours a week of our awake time at work, probably more, and with people, and that investment and that relationship means more than just what has to happen at work.
The other thing you're not getting in these virtual meetings is that happenstance meeting. You happen to bump into somebody and you just start talking about something that's not related to any Zoom call, but you gain institutional knowledge, you develop a relationship, you learn things you weren't going to learn. You might find an opportunity that you wouldn't have found. See that all the time. I mean, Steve Jobs was really big on that. In fact, he designed, his building so that it would force people to bump into each other, in an unplanned way. I think there's a lot of value to that.
I had a conversation with a girl who got her first job at JP Morgan as an investment manager or an investment portfolio manager, hired during the pandemic. So all three of us here have this great opportunity of being able to work with other people and collaborating, and now we have this experience to draw on. She's never had it. She is now she's in it, and she's like, this is amazing. I'm like learning all these things from all these people, and I never even thought that I would, have this, because when she got hired, she only knew this kind of, what is that, 2-dimensional? It wasn't a 3-dimensional thing for her. So that we talked earlier about seasoning, something always tastes better when more seasoning and more time. And I think that's what, if anything, the message could be from people who have done it before, who have both managed and worked for other people. Time and tenure is just as important as technical skill, if not more, because there's a lot more people. You can always learn that technical component, but interpersonal relationships and collaboration is very important.
Yeah, and none of this is suggesting that people should, young professionals should have poor boundaries at work, and that you should stretch yourself beyond what is reasonable and spend, 100 hours a week working. No one, there has to be a balance. You have to know your worth. You have to know when you're being taken advantage of, and when you're given an opportunity. Not every opportunity needs to be given with an additional bump in pay. That is an unreasonable expectation. So if you are then getting, to me, that's an unreasonable expectation to me, that if I give you one extra duty, then you're like, well, I'm not going to do that unless I get compensated. You're not really establishing yourself, one, as a team player, or as someone who's interested in learning something new. A good employer will understand, if this works out, then there's an opportunity here. We should be thinking about succession planning all along. Who could take this role? But if I only took new opportunities, opened new things, went new places, and took over supervising other people because I was getting compensated to, I would have lost out on a lot of future opportunities that I was promoted into and learning experiences. those things happen at the moment. Someone left, and I've learned more about running an organization when someone under me has left.
Isn't
and I've
there
had
a
to do
saying
their
like
job.
in chaos there's opportunity, right? It's
Yeah,
the
right,
ability
it's the
to
same
see
symbol.
yeah.
Yeah, you learn a lot by having to do a little bit more, and it prepares you for the next role. It also
And the
prepares you to hire
challenge.
hire the next person for the one who left, because now you understand the job differently.
Yeah, that's true. There's a different perspective now.
But to your earlier point about someone who feels like they're being taken advantage of, they need to make sure that they sort that out, and that they communicate with the person they're working for. Clearly, this person, she must like them, right? She's
I
continued to
think
work
that's
with
what
them
she
for 6
struggles
years.
with. Yes, I think she wants to be she wants to be all things to all people, and she really likes to win. So
Right.
that's got what it's a double-edged sword.
Right. So you have to think about, where do I want to be, this time next year, this time 5 years from now. And I still want to make sure that I'm doing their personal assistant stuff, which if you do, that's cool. Then do it. But if you want to be, a project manager, or you want to be taking a more professional corporate role with that organization, then something's got to give. You can't keep
maybe
all
you
of it.
reconsider.
That there are bound, within our own role. Someone said to me, a boss of mine said a long time ago, when I had always done this one specific responsibility, and my responsibilities had grown and grown and grown. And he said, at this point, you need to be the editor of that work, not the creator. And that was a really helpful frame for, if I need to be, for him and for me, I need to be 3 steps above this. I've got to give up part of this control over this process and read it, and then hire the right person.
I have totally been there. There was a mentor I had in Princeton, and he looked at me and he said, you need to exercise some new muscles. He said, you have to delegate. If you want to lead, you have to let other people do this work. It's like, that's what that is.
Yeah, and I think let's
look at the pluses of that situation you just described, Carly. So she's being asked to handle a lot of the personal things for this family or this person she works for. She's a trusted advisor. They wouldn't do that if they didn't trust her.
That's what I said, and that's a great
she
place
can
to be in.
That's a great place to be.
So leveraging opportunity.
So utilize that situation to
100%.
grow beyond where she could
Right.
in here's the job, go do it kind of thing, where here I'm trusting you with all of this personal stuff. That means I trust you, and that's huge.
Wouldn't it make a great conversation for her to consider? Does she say, listen, this is what I want to do. I want to do X, Y, and Z. The personal stuff is something that is really preventing me from doing a great job for you and your business. And we're making money over here. So what if I hired a replacement for me and I was in charge of managing her, because I know what your personal situation requires. So I'll manage her. But I can't do physically walk the dog and run a profitability spreadsheet at the same time. That's actually probably a good spot for her to be in, because now she's exercising some new muscles.
I might tweak that and say, I can help you train that person that you can manage.
Right.
Because if it's not consistent with what her goal is, and if her goal is to be more on the corporate side, she's going to have to give some of that up. And they have had a successful division of labor here before, where they had a personal assistant and then they had someone else in this corporate environment. So, not. I think
very good point, Patty. Does she really want to manage somebody? You're right. What do you want to be doing?
Yeah, and is that consistent with where your goals are, and the goals that they should have for themselves? And that's I think there is. You want to make sure you make yourself invaluable, right? That's the whole goal. Is how do you make yourself invaluable? But I think that by doing so and offering to train someone for as your replacement,
I think that's a great suggestion right there for this particular person. Because she has trepidation, because she likes them so much, and she doesn't want to not be part of their family. So I think it would give her some modicum of control that she could then assimilate this person into her situation, train them, and then be done with it. If she does a good job, that person is not going to have to be managed.
Correct.
Anyway.
She hires the right person. She doesn't have to do that.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Patty, thank you so much. This has been very helpful. I'm sure to a lot of people.
Anytime.
Bye.
Have a good one.
You too.
Bye.